Hello and welcome to the Intermezzo Championship Season 27. In the recent months, my tournament performance hasn't been really that great. I got eliminated in Stage 5 of the World Championship, I got relegated down to Platinum in the International Championship, and now in my first season there I didn't manage to win my group. In the Royal League I got relegated as well, but there has maybe been one exception to those not so great results, and that was the last, or maybe also the last two seasons of the Intermezzo Championship. 2 seasons ago I managed to win my Master group, immediately going back to Grandmaster after having been relegated. And then in the last season, I managed to win the Intermezzo Championship, which I was very happy about, I think with 18 or 19 points. And yeah, and now we have the new season. I'm playing again in Grandmaster, and I of course want to try my best to defend my title, but I have to do so against some very tough competition, which I will introduce to you now. First of all, we have Todd Silence, a player who has now been playing the game already for quite a bunch of years, has gathered a lot of experience. In the last season of the Intermezzo Championship, had his debut season in Grandmaster and immediately had a very strong result. Finished second with 17 points, only very closely behind me. So definitely had a shot at winning the season as well. And yeah, so a very strong debut season. He also played in the Grandmaster division in the International Championship already. In the last season of the International Championship, however, he played in Platinum, so same as me, got relegated a bit over the past couple seasons. And in the World Championship, he also did it similar to me. He went out in Stage 5 of the current World Championship, so the same as I did. Then, as the next player, we have Gandin, who has now his debut season in the Grandmaster division. I think for both Intermezzo and International, it is his debut season. He had already playing some seasons in Master, I think, but now the first time in Grandmaster. And if you have been following my channel recently, then you might find that name familiar, because Gandin was, of course, my opponent in Stage 4 of the World Championship, of the current World Championship. And there it was a very close finish between me, Gandin, and Fjantarik. And at the end, yeah, both I and Gandin went down to the lower bracket of Stage 5 because Fjantarik managed to win the group, but Gandin has definitely shown in those games that he can play on a very high level. And also, he made it through Stage 5 and played in Stage 6, which is still currently ongoing. However, a lot of games have already finished, and it is clear that now in Stage 6 he will be eliminated, but still a very great run for him in the World Championship. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what we can expect from him for this season. Then we have Eepogi, and Eepogi, also same as Todd Silence, has been playing the game for a lot of years, has participated in a lot of tournaments. And for Eepogi, I think I can't pinpoint the exact time, but I think he was a player who played a lot in, let's say, maybe Platinum, sometimes Master, sometimes Gold at that level, but maybe a year ago or something, his experience or his performance really went up a level, and he has now been playing in the Grandmaster division in the International Championship, will now be playing, I think, for the first time in the Grandmaster division of the Intermezzo Championship. Also in other tournaments, he has been pulling off some very great results, and yeah, so he has really shown that he improved himself even further, and yeah, is at the moment on quite a run in the World Championship. He is still playing in stage 6, and also just I think a few hours ago when I record this, it is clear that he will win his group and will move on to stage 7 of the World Championship. So a very great achievement, and a player who is in great form at the moment. And yeah, so that will definitely be a very tough opponent. Also, of course, Eepogi has his own YouTube channel that you can find linked in the description of this video. He hasn't been active in the recent weeks or months, but yeah, you can definitely check out some replay videos and maybe see some of his gameplays if you are interested. Then we have wolvs as the last player of this group. And yeah, wolvs, maybe it's a bit similar to Eepogi, has also had some really great performances over the last months or over the last year, has been playing in the Grandmaster division in both Intermezzo and International Championship. In the last season, he actually played in Master, but he won his group with a very strong result of 28 points and will now be playing in Grandmaster again. So has performed on a very consistently high level and is actually, out of the players that are playing now in Intermezzo in the Intermezzo Championship in the Grandmaster division, the player who has now been playing the longest in Grandmaster without having been relegated. So also a player who had some very great results and maybe managed to improve himself over the in the last year even more. And then in the World Championship that is currently ongoing there, he also has a very great run, managed it to make it to stage 6. And in the current stage 6, he really dominated his group and also will be playing in stage 7, where I'm not certain how many players there will be left, but I think it's definitely below 20. So a very strong result by him and by Eepogi for making it that far. And yeah, so both Eepogi and wolvs are in great form, and it will be interesting to see how they will perform. I think both of them, while having shown some great results and strong tournament performances, haven't been able to win a very big tournament yet. I hope I'm not mistaken. The tournament history of 3DH just gets bigger and bigger. I mean, we are already in season 27 of Intermezzo, so if I'm missing out on some maybe a big tournament win that they had already, then please let me know. But I think at least in International Intermezzo Championship and also World Championship, they didn't manage to win season yet, so for both of them it's maybe a shot at getting that first win in now in the Intermezzo Championship. And wolvs, in addition to being a very strong player, is of course also a very tournament organizer who organizes some very popular tournaments like the Royal League, Mercurial Ladder, Sodium Ladder, so some very well represented tournaments, also a Nations Cup he has been organizing. So now I think behind Payada maybe at the moment biggest tournament organizer, and with that definitely also offering some great value to the 3DH's community. Alright, but now enough with the introduction of my opponents, or not fully enough, because we will now take a quick look at the clicker rating of those players. Alright, here we have the clicker rating, and as you can see, I have dropped quite a bit in the rating. I was the number 1 rated player for quite a while, but now I'm at rank 15 after my not so great performances. I dropped quite a bit in the ranking, and now of course I'm not too happy about dropping that much, but I just have to try my best to maybe regain some rating with some good tournament results. But I'm still the best rated players out of the 5 players that are playing in Grandmaster this season in the Mezzo, but the next players are not that far behind. wolvs at the moment is at the 19th position, only 6 conservative rating points behind me. Then Eepogi is at the 20th position, so both of them only very slightly behind me. Todd Silence is at position 33 and Garden at position 38. So we can see that the rating of those players is relatively close together. So we don't have a clear favorite, we don't have a clear underdog. With the recently great performances, I think both wolvs and Eepogi maybe some of the players that will have a good shot at winning the league. Garden, with maybe not having that much experience on that highest level yet, maybe the slight underdog, but as said, it's such a close rating difference that it will maybe be a very close season potentially, and every player definitely having a good shot at winning the league and having to live in fear maybe of getting relegated. Alright, with that I hope we have introduced the player, as I hope I haven't forgot about mentioning anything that I wanted to mention. But yeah, now we will take a look at the first game, which will be a game against wolvs and Eepogi, so potentially the 2 strongest opponents in the group, and of course getting a nice result out of this game could be important and would be a very nice start for me. And yeah, but now without further ado, let's take a look at the game. In this game I'm playing in the first position, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there are some science and lab synergies, especially from the leaders in age 3. We have Einstein, Sid Meier, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. We have no spaceflight, however, also no internet, but the Manhattan Project. We also have the Hollywood, Chaplin and Fleming, so going for some theaters definitely could work well as well. Then we have the Red Cross, which is important, also Mandela is there. We have some strong H2 wonders. There's the Ocean Liner Service together with Maria Theresa. There's the Suez Canal together with James Cook. The Harvard College is there. Also Kremlin and Eiffel Tower. We have 2 military action leaders with Catherine and Robespierre. We have some culture leaders with Shakespeare, potentially Darwin. Also Nobel, as maybe to get into some science-focused strategies. In H1 we have Silk Road but no Universitas. We have both the Happy Face solution wonders with Forbidden City and St. Peter's Basilica. Also Machu Picchu is there. We have no military action leader in H1. Nostradamus, Genghis Khan, Barbarossa can help with the strength. Columbus can be very interesting with this colonization payoff later in H2. Also of course Barbarossa, Eleanor, Isabella can all work nicely in a colonization game. Then we have Michelangelo together with St. Peter's Basilica and Machu Picchu. He definitely has some potential as well. And yeah. I'm playing in first position. I already start with a bit of an interesting position, at least for my kind of play style that maybe I went for at least some while ago, but I think Sun Tzu is probably a leader that I underestimated for a little while, and maybe a year ago or something I would have just gone for Aristotle. However, the Aristotle, playing him in first position can be a bit annoying. It will take longer until the first technology cards will be available for you for one civil action, so Aristotle I like a little bit more when I'm playing, for example, in third position in a 3-player game. And with that, I think Aristotle is not that great, and I rather went for Sun Tzu here. We have the Suez Canal and James Cook in the game. We have Barbarossa, Genghis Khan, Columbus, so some leaders that are maybe synergizing nicely with him. And with playing him first position, I can maybe put a bit of pressure on the other players. And I, at the end, went with Sun Tzu as a pick, hoping that maybe Hanging Gardens or Acropolis could be available as for one civil action for me. Maybe both not the strongest wonders, but Hanging Gardens, if there will be a military-heavy early game, can be quite strong. And also Acropolis is just cheap, will give me 1 strength, and could also just be a very helpful wonder. Eepogi will go for Aristotle and the Hanging Gardens. And I think that makes sense, having a leader and a wonder. Said Hanging Gardens sometimes cannot be that great, but I think in a position now playing behind Sun Tzu, where there could be some military pressure, it can work out quite strongly. Then Wolves will just go for the Stonehenge. Could have, for example, gone for Acropolis plus Frugality or something, but maybe values the Stonehenge a little bit more. And he doesn't need to grab one of those leaders because both I and Eepogi have already committed to a leader, and he is guaranteed to get whatever leader he wants at the next turn. Now it is my turn. We can see that actually no new wonder is revealed, and with that it's relatively clear what I want to do. I go for Sun Tzu, building a mine, increasing my population, and then taking the Acropolis just to have a wonder. And there's a bit of synergy, there are some culture leaders, and just getting the cheap strength and in general the benefits for the relatively cheap price I think is perfectly fine, and so I will just go for the Acropolis here. I have my first draw, which I was not too happy about. I have 2 tactics that I can work with, so that's nice, but I have sadly no event that I can push. So ideally I would like to really get start pushing the event deck, making it that H1 events will be revealed relatively quickly, that I can maybe dictate the event deck and know most parts of it, can maybe really do it that the event deck has some events that hopefully will favor me, that I don't have the chance for now, but at least I have those tactics, and maybe I will get some event draws with the next draw. Eepogi will go for Aristotle, builds a mine, and then takes the Engineering Genius. Not ideal grabbing it for 2, but the yellow cards available for 1 civil action are not really that great of an alternative. He also denies it from Wolves, so I was happy to see it, and I also think it's the best move for Eepogi. In some situations, increasing population and then grabbing a yellow card for 1 civil action can be better, but both of those yellow cards are not really great for him in the situation. Wolves now has to make a decision what leader he wants to go for, and he goes for Confucius, which I think makes sense. He will now have a lot of science to work with, builds a mine and increases his population. Now it is my turn, I can't use my politics phase. I will start my turn with taking the rich land because I can't spend that many civil actions on my own civilization, and I need to spend some civil actions to take some cards, and the rich land for one civil action is, I think, by far the most effective pick that I can do here, so that I want to grab definitely. I could now, for example, build a step of the Acropolis, leave a free population, not go into consumption or something like this, maybe then grab the urban growth to be able to build a second lab for cheaper. So that could be an idea, but I don't have a leader that produces additional science. Acropolis of course gives me a discount on the monarchy, but nonetheless I didn't want to delay my science production here and went for building the second lab. Now the question is how to spend my last two civil actions. I can maybe just grab something for 2, or I can increase my population and grab something for 1. Now that I have already built a lab, the urban growth is maybe not as great. However, with having the Acropolis, it definitely can be an idea later on to maybe build even another urban building and develop a government form for cheaper. So the urban growth could still be a pick that could be considered, and also both of those leaders could be considered. Maybe taking Eleanor and using her later on as a transitional leader could be interesting. I also really thought about Isabella here, because with the strong colonization payoff, maybe I can use her as a strong colonization leader. I first can keep Sansu, maybe get some nice draws in, put some colonies into the deck. The problem with that is that the cartography is coming down the row, and it's definitely possible, especially with both of my opponents having some additional science available because of their leaders, that the cartography could be taken, and that both of my opponents then will be nicely prepared for potential colonies that I will see it. I will have Isabella, they will have cartography, so I didn't like too much to invest 2 civil actions into Isabella here, and at the end I actually made a decision to increase my population and then take the frugality. Which feels a little bit awkward, because I could maybe take the urban growth. With that I stay out of consumption, basically generating the 1 food that I'm now getting with taking the frugality. But I still think it is a pick that makes sense, because the urban growth, while maybe being nice with the Acropolis, it's still unclear how quickly it will be possible for me to use it nicely. Maybe if I want to push for a bit more military heavy game, I don't find a nice use to use the urban growth in the near future. And also, while I don't really produce a food with taking the frugality compared to just taking the urban growth, at least I'm 1 civil action ahead. I have a little bit more freedom at my next turn to take some cards, and also I have a free population. And with me having Sansu, wanting to see it at the next turn, wolves having Confucius, there's definitely a chance that development of warfare or religion will be revealed, and then I have the Acropolis, so missing out on a religion is maybe even more painful than with having a different wonder. So at the end I went with increasing my population, and now that I increase my population, I think the frugality is probably the best pick. First of all, because now I have already built 3 mines and 2 labs, meaning that those 2 yellow cards are not clear. I don't know if I will find a nice time to use them in H1, and also I'm now getting very early in consumption, then getting at least a little bit of food with this yellow card to make up for it, I think is quite nice. Just taking the urban growth, or maybe also one of those leaders, could have been fine as well. Maybe not building the second lab, instead building a step, taking the urban growth could be fine as well. At the end I wanted to get the science production going, and I wanted to have the free population and a bit more flexibility for my civil actions at the next turn. I just keep those 2 tactics in hand and will draw some new cards. And now I actually have quite a bunch of events available: new deposits, developed territory, and the barbarians. Eepogi offers the open borders agreement to wolves. I was not happy to see that. It's quite early, and of course in a 3-player game you never like it when your 2 opponents can accept a strong pact with each other. Eepogi will also build a second lab, and he indeed will grab the cartography, so that one is now taken, and now it will be a bit difficult to execute a strong colonization game, at least with putting colonies into the deck. Then it's Wolf's turn. He will see the development of civil life is revealed. I was a bit afraid of that, because one downside of going very early into consumption can be that there's just no nice use case for the development of civil life. I have no technology in hand, I can't increase my population, I can basically only build a religion at this point for 2 resources. So I was really hoping that when I will push at my turn, that maybe some additional food or something will be revealed, so that I can use the development of civil life to increase my population. Wolves will do an interesting turn here. First of all, he will take Eleanor, which is a perfectly fine pick, especially getting her for one civil action. However, which is a bit interesting, at least, is that he will elect her immediately, giving up on Confucius, instead getting Eleanor, yeah, which a move that maybe I wouldn't do. I maybe would still like to get the additional science from Confucius, but on the other hand, he has the Stonehenge. With that, he will already get some additional science, and now he will get additional draws earlier, will score culture earlier, and with the additional draws, maybe also will have a better shot at winning some colonies at some point. So an interesting choice, but with having the additional science from the Stonehenge, maybe the science from Confucius is not that important. Maybe the benefits from Eleanor can already be good enough to elect her immediately. And then with the last 3 civil actions, he is actually willing to just take the iron, which is quite expensive, but maybe the cards that are available for cheap are not that interesting. I mean, he could have taken Swordsman, maybe build a step of the Stonehenge, increase his population, just do some more effective stuff. But with the additional science from the Stonehenge, I think going for iron setup is stronger than usual, because you still have more than enough science to do some other stuff. And in general, of course, getting iron going quickly can be strong, so quite an investment, but one that could still work out fine for him. Now it is my turn. I really want to push, and with Wolves electing Eleanor, the decision what I want to push got a little bit easier, because before I thought I don't really want to push the developed territory without getting iron. I maybe don't really want to push the new deposits, but the barbarians now hopefully will be a relatively safe event for me, because Wolves will soon start generating some culture with Eleanor. So I see the barbarians into the deck, and I do get a bit lucky here. I was very happy to see the development of trade routes, because now I can actually use the development of civil life to increase my population. And also important to note, if for example development of markets would have been revealed, then using the development of civil life to increase my population wouldn't have been possible, because it would have evaluated before I get the choice of what to take. So there were not that many events that just give me straight up food immediately. Development of trade routes is one of them, and now I can use the development of civil life to increase my population. I have the Acropolis, so this turn I decided that I'm willing to pick the monarchy for 2 civil actions. A bit expensive, maybe I could go for something different, for example the engineering genius, but at the end I still thought going up to more civil and military actions could be quite strong. For example Nostradamus, Barbarossa, also for Columbus, it can be strong to have some additional military actions, so I felt the monarchy is maybe quite interesting in this game. Sadly, I won't have a shot at getting the Forbidden City, which would be a nice combination later on with the monarchy. Now I have 2 civil actions left. I could, for example, just take the engineering genius, which I can use immediately on the Acropolis at the next turn, but I think it's a better solution for me to just build the first step of the Acropolis now and then take the urban growth, which is only 1 resource less. It doesn't have as clear of a use case. However, with now having a monarchy in hand, I think it could be a very interesting turn at the next turn to finish the Acropolis with the urban growth, build a 3rd urban building, and then develop the monarchy for very cheap. And also, while maybe taking the engineering genius would make it that I take that potentially strong yellow card away from my opponents, both of them have a wonder at the moment where they only would be able to use the engineering genius for 2 resources, so I think it's not too important to deny the engineering genius here. Instead of the urban growth, however, I could have also taken a swordsman. I have this fighting band tactic in hand that I could potentially upgrade with Sun Tzu. However, with also having the medieval army tactic, I thought that maybe waiting for the knights could be fine, and with that at the end I didn't invest a civil action into the swordsman, but that also could have been a very fine pick and maybe potentially more important than the urban growth. However, if I don't take the urban growth, then if I don't get help from the developments, I wouldn't have enough resource at the next turn to finish the Acropolis and build an urban building. So having that opportunity I think is quite strong, and with that I at the end went with the urban growth. I still keep both tactics in my hand. I will get some more draws. One event that I can push, the knowledge of the ancients. Eepogi seeds and opens the development of politics, so even more draws. I have now also the Reign of Terror in hand. Wolves will get already quite a big Eleanor bonus now at his next turn with the development of politics being revealed. Eepogi will increase his population 2 times, takes the printing press interestingly, and also the swordsman, scoring 2 signs with Aristotle. The printing press is an interesting pick, however he has the hanging gardens, and with that maybe he can allow himself to put some population in those printing presses. There's also some synergy with Shakespeare, Darwin, also Fleming in the Hollywood in age 3, so let's see how that will work out for him. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will seed, opens the development of planning. The options for the development of planning are development of religion, agriculture, and science. Wolves takes the development of science, will start some iron production, goes for one upgrade, increases his population, and then just increases his population again, is not willing to grab any of those yellow cards or a copy of warfare. But he has already the third military action thanks to the open borders agreement. He reveals a copy of fighting band. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I actually see the Reign of Terror, maybe a little bit risky, but as you can see in the row, a copy of Knights appeared, and I will take that copy now. I will also get one strength with the Acropolis. I don't have the most population now. I went very early into consumption, and so far there hasn't been a lot of additional food revealed. I mean, I got one from development of trade routes and then one from the development of civil life, so that's still fine. But I was hoping that I will manage to not be the weakest. I won't go for Nostradamus, which could have been an idea potentially, but I still was willing to see the Reign of Terror here. The event revealed are the development of crafts. This turn I will first of all finish the Acropolis. I can take this through religion, which is very nice because now I get a discount in the monarchy before I develop it. And then with 3 civil actions remaining, I made the decision to now develop the monarchy. I didn't use the urban growth to build another urban building, just because now I got this free religion. I have already my 3rd urban building, and also, as said, I'm very low in population. I just seeded the strength event into the deck, and I just might need the population a lot more in the military. I then will take the knights, and to make sure that I can develop them at the next turn, I will also take the cultural heritage. I could have also built a knight already this turn instead of developing the monarchy, maybe already going for tactic, but I think my opponents will manage to not be in danger of an aggression, and I just wanted to get the additional civil and military action going, and even without going for knights, I'm the strongest for now, and I can, thanks to the cultural heritage, go for knights at the next turn. I will draw a bunch of cards, actually 2 colonization cards, the Raider and another copy of Medieval Army. Eepogi seeds, and the Reign of Terror isn't revealed yet. Instead, the Historic Territory, which I was actually willing to bid quite a lot for. Maybe a bit dangerous, because with the culture I maybe get in barbarian range again. Also, I am already low in population, but I also was hoping that maybe I can just push the price a little bit for Eepogi, and if I win it, it's a bit costly for me now. Maybe it could ruin my early game a little bit, but on the other hand, I have then already a colony for a Suez Canal. Maybe I will draw another one with Sun Tzu. There is still Columbus coming. I could get a second one with Columbus, and if I then draw a colony in H2, the Suez Canal out of the Sudden would already be quite a strong wonder. So with that I was willing to bid that much, hoping that maybe it will just make Eepogi pay a little bit more, 1 colonization card, and if not, it could still work out fine for me. But at the end Eepogi wins it, at least he has to send his colonization card away now. He will this turn develop the printing press, builds one, goes for the swordsman, builds the swordsman, and then builds one a step of the hanging gardens, can maybe finish the wonder at the next turn. Also, he will reveal a legion tactic. Wolves seeds. I was hoping that maybe either Reign of Terror or Barbarians will be revealed. Barbarians at this point would hit Eepogi. But sadly, no strength event is revealed yet. Instead, the Confucius event is revealed, giving everyone 1 additional science. Wolves goes for the swordsman, is not willing to pay an additional civil action for the knights, which at the end could turn out to be the upgraded tactic from Sun Tzu, but with the additional civil actions he manages to just do some relatively efficient stuff. Upgrades 1 mine, builds 1 step of the Stonehenge, and with having already built 1 step, he at the next turn, for example, could go for a copy of Code of Laws, develop it, and afterwards still finish the Stonehenge. Now it is my turn. I was willing to seed here the Raiders. It's not the ideal situation, because now with having gotten some culture for discarding, Wolves has overtaken Eepogi with the culture, and he is also the strongest at the moment. So if the Barbarians would be revealed, then actually nothing would happen, which would be a bit bad. I would like it more if maybe the Barbarians could lead to a population loss, but at least the Reign of Terror would hit Eepogi at the moment, and also it's not that easily possible for me to get stronger, so having a shot at getting the Reign of Terror out now would actually be quite nice. So I see that, hoping that maybe the Reign of Terror and that no barbarians will be revealed. And I do get the right event. The Reign of Terror is indeed revealed. Eepogi will lose a population when we take a look at the civilization. It will be a bit annoying. He doesn't have a free population, has to destroy something. There isn't really anything that he wants to destroy. Of course, you never want to destroy something, but maybe he can lose a lab and then at some point build more printing presses, but definitely an annoying event for him. I this turn played a cultural heritage, and there's a bit of a problem because I mean, now that the Reign of Terror is out, it's not that big of a problem. If the Reign of Terror would have stayed in the deck, it would have been a bit more annoying, because then, if I don't increase my strength at all, I would be at the risk of losing a population to the Reign of Terror. However, now, I maybe have some options, because the problem is building one knight is not enough to get me out of corruption, and then I just don't have any way, basically, to get out of corruption. Now I made a decision to not go for the knights this turn with the Reign of Terror being out. Instead, I play the Cultural Heritage, make space in my hand, I take the Alchemy, develop it, go for one upgrade with the Urban Growth for relatively cheap, and then for a second upgrade, getting me out of corruption, going up to force science production, being the weakest for the moment, but I know that one of the events are the barbarians and I don't get hit by those, and me being the weakest could even be motivating Eepogi to maybe seed, because the thing is, if Eepogi seeds and gets one culture for seeding out of the set, and he is the most culture again, and then the barbarians could be revealed and he could lose population, and losing another population after already losing one to the Reign of Terror could be a very big setback for him, and could really make the game quite difficult for him. So I thought that maybe being weaker could even be beneficial, as maybe it could incentivize Eepogi to seed. I revealed a tactic now because I want to keep all of the colonization cards. Eepogi went for the cartography. It's definitely possible that there are more colonies coming. I even draw another colonization card now, also 2 more events and an aggression. Eepogi does actually seed, but sadly no barbarians are revealed, so he doesn't have the second population loss in addition to the Reign of Terror, at least not for now. However, the cultural influence is revealed, giving him an additional culture, and also, after going for the Code of Laws, a card that I was kinda hoping towards, as I have a bunch of science and I have the monarchy, but I was fearing that maybe both players could be in a position to take the Code of Laws here. And Eepogi will then increase his population, builds another printing press, a little bit greedy maybe, he really doesn't have a lot of population. He will of course get 2 food from the Hanging Gardens, which allows him to get another population, can then maybe go for another swordsman. I don't have the most population, so maybe he's not that much in danger, and if there is really a big need to increase his military, he can also at some point just destroy the lab. So it's a bit greedy, but probably for the moment is fine with it. However, with getting the cultural influence and now also building an additional library, it means that even with getting the culture for seeding, when wolvs seeds, Eepogi would still have the most culture and would still get hit by the barbarians after his turn, which, with again having no free population, would again be quite a big hit for him. And wolf seeds indeed, the barbarians are revealed, Eepogi loses another population, and that definitely is now quite a big setback for him. Wolves is willing to take the Code of Laws. With 13 cards remaining in the deck, he has a very good shot at the age not ending and having another shot at finishing the Stonehenge at the next turn. Also maybe the reason why he takes the left copy of Breakthrough. He leaves me this copy of Breakthrough if I want to take it, but I have a bunch of science now anyway, and he just probably wants to increase the chances that the age won't end, which are now very high. Then I will seed the Scientific Breakthrough with having gone for the Alchemist. That hopefully will turn out to be a fine event. Also, I just thought it should be nice to seed with not being the weakest, especially because if Eepogi indeed has committed to another colony, now it would be the perfect time for it being revealed, because I have actually so many colonization cards in hand that I can't even keep all of them. And the Pestilence is revealed. An event that is somewhat annoying for me, but I had a free population. It's a bit annoying because I am generally relatively low in population, but for Eepogi, losing another population now to Pestilence after having lost one to Reign of Terror, and also this turn he will lose one to the Barbarians, that now starts to get really painful for him. Now he has to destroy 2 things at his turn that will go back into his yellow bank. After having lost a population, will increase my population to get the population back. I will now this turn go for a knight, build one, get out of corruption, going up to 7 strength, being prepared for example, the raiders that I've pushed in the deck, and then I have 3 civil actions left. We are now almost at the end of H1, my next turn could very likely already be in H2. I could wait for example, Barbarossa, but I don't really have a lot of food saved up, and so even though I have no colony in hand, I went for Columbus here, hoping that I will still draw one colony at the near future. Maybe I get even lucky, draw an H2 colony early, and with Gavin, and if I should get a colony, that also could open up the possibility for a Suez Canal later on. So I am with the alternatives of Genghis Khan and Barbarossa not being that great, and Columbus having a lot of potential, I was willing to go for that bit of a risky pick here. I will elect Columbus, as there is definitely a chance that the age will end before my next turn. Then I have 2 civil actions left, and I made the decision to first of all grab the breakthrough, and then also a copy of irrigation, because at the next turn I might have some issues to get out of corruption if I don't have the irrigation in hand. I could have a shot at getting the last copy of iron to go for some iron upgrades instead, but if I don't have a nice shot, or if maybe the iron stays in 3, or maybe even in the deck, having the irrigation in hand, starting some food production could be quite strong. Also especially because I really don't have the most population, so getting some population, some food upgrades going could also just help me maybe building more military in the near future. And if I should get lucky and maybe draw a yellow token colony with Columbus, then maybe irrigation can also work out quite nicely as a long-term food solution. I take the right copy of the irrigation because I thought maybe there's a very, very small chance that Eepogi will go for an annoying turn for wolves. I thought it's not really likely, but what he could do now that I take this copy of irrigation, Richland, Machu Picchu will be in the discard spot, and Alchemy, Genghis Khan, and Theology will be available for 1 civil action. I thought that maybe there's a chance that Eepogi will take Alchemy, Theology, scoring 2 more signs with Aristotle, then going for Genghis Khan. And because Barbarossa at this point is maybe also not doing that much for him. I mean, with the Hanging Gardens he will get some food, so it could still be a fine leader, but with Genghis Khan he will have the possibility to upgrade to copy the upgraded medieval army tactic. And if Eepogi should take Alchemy, Genghis Khan, and Theology, then another 5 cards will be taken from the row, and the age would actually end before Wolf's turn. He wouldn't be able to finish the Stonehenge. The science, I think, is extremely valuable for him. He still needs a government form, and the Happy Face would be useful for him as well. He has already invested 1 civil action, 1 resource into it, so I thought maybe Eepogi, with having could go for this turn, as it would score him some science and would cause some troubles for wolves. I keep just all of the colonization cards in hand, and I was quite happy to see that I actually draw a colony immediately. Not the ideal one, but getting H2 draws with using that in H2 can still be quite fine, and just having any colony in hand I was very happy about. Especially because maybe I can use Columbus for the strategic territory, get some H2 draws, having a bigger shot at getting an H2 colony, and out of the sudden the Suez Canal could already be a very fine wonder. Eepogi seeds, the rats are revealed, so even more food or population loss, even though the players have not that much food saved up. Eepogi will finish the Hanging Gardens, has lost 1 food to the rats, but with 2 food, with having lost that many tokens back to the bank, he can now just increase his population and builds a warrior to get a bit stronger. He then goes for Genghis Khan, elects him, and takes the rich land, so sadly he at the end wasn't willing to take those 2 cards. But yeah, I thought the chance was very small anyway. He basically would have just finished the Hanging Gardens and then just taken those 3 cards and wouldn't have been able to build an additional unit, and now with copying the tactic also getting stronger than wolves. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will seed and opens the call to arms, which is a bit annoying for him. Losing 2 civil actions means that he now just has the civil actions left to finish the Stonehenge, but he can't do anything else. But the good news is at least he has now a lot of cards in hand and will actually score 6 culture with Eleanor at the end of his turn. So he will finish the Stonehenge and can't really do anything else. He could have upgraded a warrior to swordsman. Interesting that he didn't do it, because now he maybe has to sacrifice some H2 draws for it. Maybe he didn't have any event card left for Eleanor to seed, but maybe that's unlikely with having had that many draws also now with the call to arms. Now H2 starts. I could use Columbus already for the strategic territory, but I'm also the strongest, and there are the raiders in the deck, so I made the decision to instead seed the new deposits into the deck, especially because I will actually go for iron this turn. The Dark Ages are revealed. I was happy to see it because I have some decent science production. I have my government farm already and I will lose only 1 science, while wolves lose 3 science, and with that loses quite a bunch of the science that Stonehenge has just given him. He still needs a government farm, has low science production, so I think that is quite a painful event for him. Then I this turn will go for the iron, develop it, go for 2 upgrades, and go up to 5 resource production. It's relatively late iron, but I get 2 upgrades done immediately. I know that a new deposit is coming soon, and also there are some very interesting wonders, Ocean Liner, Suez Canal, Harvard College, so having some iron production already going and then maybe being able to take one of those wonders could just be quite strong. As you maybe noticed, I didn't use the rich land, even though I could have, but with using the rich land, I, at the next turn, would not be automatically out of corruption. I would just sit here at 2 with just... I miss 1 token to get out of corruption, which is not that bad. I can maybe upgrade just 1 more mine and I would already be out of corruption. But at the next turn there will be the first stage 2 cards available, and with that it can maybe be nice to have the option just spending all of civil actions to take some cards, especially if maybe there's a strong wonder available. I could take something like Ocean Line or Harvard College, even for expensive, maybe take another card if there's something interesting, and that just gives me some more flexibility because now I will already be out of corruption at the beginning of my turn. I keep the strategic territory and 2 colonization cards in hand. I don't draw an H2 colony yet, instead I draw the defensive army and the classic army, so I have some nice options available for the tactics already, especially the classic army with having invested into knights could be very nice to have, so I was quite happy to have this tactic available. Eepogi seeds and the raiders hit. Sometimes not the most influential event, but for Eepogi, with having that low production, losing now I think one food and 1 resource is definitely still quite painful. He upgrades 1 warrior to swordsman, getting a bit stronger, takes Nobel, elects Nobel, and then takes the rich land. He could have copied the medieval army tactic to get 2 more strength with Genghis Khan, but now he just gets the strength from Nobel. He gets more science production, which makes it a lot more easier for him to get into government form, and Nobel is even better for him. He doesn't know it, or he didn't know it at that point yet, but the scientific breakthrough is coming, so I think Nobel is a very nice choice for him here. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will seed and opens the scientific breakthrough. And yeah, so that is revealed immediately. Eepogi gets 4 science out of it. I gain 4 science out of it. Wolves gain 2 science, gains 2 science out of it. Not the most, but with his low science, the 2 science might still be helpful for him. He this turn is actually willing to grab the selective breeding for expensive. Maybe the cards that are available for cheaper civil action cost are not too interesting for him, and now he can just get some food production going immediately, can increase his population at the next turn, so that should be quite fine. He will go for the warrior upgrade now, so now he misses out on an H2 draw, so maybe that was a small mistake at the turn before, or maybe he was still hoping for a specific H1 card that he wanted to draw at the last turn in H1. Now it's my turn, and as you can see I actually used Columbus this turn. First of all, the other choice for politics could have been to seed the national pride, but at the moment it's looking like the others might have a bit more culture than I do, so it's not the greatest event to seed. And there's actually a Suez Canal coming down the road, so I was hoping that maybe if I used the strategic territory, I could draw an H2 colony immediately, and if I should draw one, then I could just very safely go for the Suez Canal here, and also making sure to take it away from Eepogi, who has a colony already and has cartography to maybe potentially win even more colonies. But sadly I don't get a colony draw, so now it's the question what to do this turn. I will first of all start with upgrading my last mine. Now a relatively safe option could maybe be to develop the irrigation, go for 2 upgrades, then maybe take the patriotism or the drama, just use my civil actions relatively effectively. I could also think about going for the Silk Road here, maybe start building some steps already, getting even more science production, a bit of culture production. I do think all of that could potentially be fine. However, the Silk Road is also quite a heavy civil action investment. But at the end, I was actually willing to go for a bit of a gamble, which maybe is too much of a gamble, or the reward that I potentially get out of it maybe is not enough. because I, despite not having drawn a colony yet, will actually go for the Suez Canal here, and I will build one step, just use my civil actions effectively. Of course, if I should draw a colony for the Suez Canal, then I think it will turn out to be a very fine pick. And at least I have 3 military actions. I had already 6 draws from age 2. Those have been no colonies, so now the chance to draw some colonies gets a bit bigger. And I have 3 military actions. I don't really can or need to build some military in the next turn, so hopefully I will just have 3 draws every turn. With that, there is definitely a good chance that I will draw a colony, but there's of course definitely the risk that I won't draw any colony, and maybe the Suez Canal here is not strong enough to justify this risk. On the other hand, Eepogi has a bit of a tough position, and maybe if he has a colony, or maybe he takes the gamble and is hoping for a strong colony, the Suez Canal could definitely be a way for him to get back into the game. On the other hand, there's also of course an ocean liner service left that also could potentially help him coming back into the game. So I think maybe not really justified to take that risk here. On the other hand, I will hopefully be able to maximize the amount of draws that I will have, and if I should get any colony, I think the Suez Canal will turn out to be a very fine investment, but of course I also don't know how quickly I will find a colony, and then not being able to finish that and use the civil actions to finish that could be quite annoying. I block myself from potential ocean liner service, so I think if I get a colony, it probably at the end worked out fine. But maybe with only having 1 colony. With 2 colonies, I think I would just take the Suez Canal and wouldn't question it. With 1 colony, I think it is a bit questionable. But I mean, I have a bunch of colonization cards, and maybe if there are some colonies coming, I could have a shot at winning even another colony, and then if I should draw one, I would have a total of 3 colonies with the Suez Canal. So, yeah, it can work out fine, but maybe the reward is not big enough to take the risk of potentially not getting any colony. I have my first draws after committing to the Suez Canal, and I don't get a colony yet. I get a potentially interesting pact if one of my opponents is willing to accept it. Eepogi will actually try a plunder against wolves. Those have an open borders agreement, which actually causes wolves to discard an H2 colonization card that maybe will help Eepogi to win a potential colony that might be coming. Also, there's a copy of coal revealed after my turn, and with having a rich land, Eepogi can actually just go for 1 upgrade, and I think getting those early coal upgrades going is definitely something nice for him, being able to invest the civil actions and just get some production going immediately. Wolf Seeds, the foray is revealed, giving both me and Eepogi some additional food and resources. Wolves this turn takes the scientific method and goes for maybe a bit of an interesting decision here, because my instinct here would be to just develop it and go for 2 upgrades. Of course, a lot of resources are spent in, but Wolves has a fine resource production, and he really needs some science, so I thought that going for 2 scientific method upgrades immediately could be a very strong move here. In 2 turns, he then would have enough science to go for a government form, and I think he could end up having a solid position. However, he goes for something different here. He will actually grab the architecture, grab an efficient upgrade, and then go for food upgrades. Instead of getting some science upgrades, he gets now some additional food. He gets the efficient upgrade, which will save him some resources if he maybe goes for those scientific method upgrades later on. And he grabs the architecture, which is generally a strong technology to have. The problem is, of course, that he doesn't have enough science to go for both scientific method and architecture soon, so maybe he can't really use the discount of the architecture that nicely on the scientific method. But with those potentially strong wonders that are coming, the architecture might save some civil actions and long term can be a strong technology. So maybe Wolves is rather focusing a bit more on a long-term setup here than on the immediate value out of the increased science production. So that turn surprised me a little bit by him, but let's see how it will work out for him. And now it is my turn. I am the strongest, but I don't have the option to push. But what I can do is offer the scientific cooperation. Eepogi has a similar amount of science production as I do. He has a bit less science saved up. Also, he still needs a government form, so a big amount of science will maybe go in 1 technology. So I thought maybe he will reject it. On the other hand, it's early in the game. This pact has some potential over the course of the game and can create quite a bit of value. So I offered it to Eepogi, hoping that maybe he would accept, especially because maybe I don't have a lot of technologies in hand. I don't have that many civil actions, so maybe There isn't, it's not that easy for me to just develop a lot of technologies, and as you can see, actually accepted it, which I was happy to see. Then I this turn will go for the selective breeding. It's the second copy. With taking it, I will also deny it from Eepogi, which is maybe not too bad for him, because as you can see, he will now actually have a shot at getting the Ocean Liner service, which I think will be quite strong for him. If I wouldn't have gone for the Suez Canal, I now might have had a shot at the Ocean Liner. But I mean, I'm getting the selective breeding now for only 3 signs, thanks to the scientific cooperation. And I could have also gone for irrigation. If I at the end will still get a yellow token colony for my Suez Canal, that maybe can be fine, but I think it's still quite early in H2, and with that I was willing to pay the additional price for the selective breeding. It gets me out of corruption, it leaves me with just enough resources to finish the Suez Canal at the next turn in case I should draw a colony, and with that I thought it is just a very solid turn. I was a bit worried because both Team Sports and Organized Religion are already in a row. There's only one copy of Organized Religion left then, and being left without a happy face solution could be annoying, but at the end I was willing to take that risk. Also, I didn't grab the navigation, which could of course be interesting to have with the Suez Canal, also with maybe if there are some more colonies coming with Eepogi having the cartography, but I also at the end just went for this clean food upgrades turn and didn't want to take corruption or something just to grab the navigation here, especially because I don't have any knowledge about colonies in the deck, and I also don't have any in hand. And you can imagine that I was very relieved about my next draw. I actually draw 2 colonies, the developed territory and the vast territory, so now the Suez Canal at the end will turn out to be a very fine wonder for me. Eepogi seeds and opens the good harvest. My food upgrades actually pay off quite big immediately. I didn't have knowledge about this event. Might even cause me some corruption issues, but overall still quite nice, having gotten now 6 instead of only 2 additional food out of it. Also, there have been some government forms revealed for Eepogi, and thanks to the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I only developed 1 technology, so Eepogi would have had 10 signs when rejecting the pact. Now he has 9, and 9 is just enough to develop the Republic, and he will now go for the Republic, he will take the Ocean Liner, he will go for 1 more coal upgrade, and out of the sudden his position is kinda coming together. He really had some big losses in the early game, but now he has 8 civil actions, 7 resource production, with Nobel a very fine amount of science production, and at the next turn he can finish the Ocean Liner service and is also his food income fixed. Maybe he still doesn't have the greatest military position, maybe at some point will still need a bit more science, but at least there's the Scientific Cooperation Pact ongoing, so yeah, out of the sudden his position looks already quite a bit solid again. Now it's Wolf's turn, he seeds again, opens the knowledge of the ancients, and I gain 2 science and 1 additional resource. Wolves this turn will go for the Gremlin. Again, he could have maybe gone for some scientific method upgrades, but now he goes for the Gremlin, develops the architecture, finishes the Gremlin, increases his population, and takes the Organized Religion. And it's interesting, but I think that can also work out quite nicely, because he could have of course gone for scientific method upgrades this turn, but he wouldn't have been able to do those upgrades with the architecture, so missing out on some science production now, but he gets an additional military action, civil action, some culture production, and can at the next turn go for those scientific method upgrades with a discount. He has the architecture running, can maybe go even for another wonder, so I think that all looks nice. One downside could be that, of course, with having delayed the scientific method, it will now take maybe a bit longer until he can get into government form, but with having the Kremlin, he has now a fine amount of civil and military actions anyway, and one of the leaders that is left in the deck is actually Robespierre, and with Robespierre, maybe he can also just for very cheap get into a government form, and that might at the end justify the delay of the science production that he went for with not going for the scientific method this turn and also not at the last turn. This turn, as you can see, I will just finish the Suez Canal, I won't seed. I could have maybe pushed the colony, because the colony is worth more maybe to me on one hand. On the other hand, the colony that I actually want to go for with the Suez Canal is not a vast territory here, because that will actually cause quite some corruption issues for me, and instead a developed territory. And then the vast territory, despite Eepogi getting the Ocean Liner, I think could still be quite a nice improvement for him. He has the cartography, I don't have that many colonization cards in hand, and also a big reason here to not seed is that the event on top is actually the new deposits. Revealing it now would actually cost me some corruption this turn if I want to play the turn how I did it. And I will also gain more resources out of the new deposits after my turn because of the Suez Canal, so I think it's just better to not seed here. Then I will finish the Suez Canal. As said, I will go for the developed territory that will immediately get me out of corruption, leaving myself with 2 civil actions to still do some stuff, and there are actually quite some interesting things that I can do, actually even more than I have the civil actions for. And while I guess gain less yellow tokens than with the vast territory, I still gain 2, and with having now those selective breedings, having got the good harvest, I thought that my population situation should be good enough just with getting the developed territory. My first instinct was here to take the Rifleman and take James Cook in hand, and I would have the Rifleman available for the classic army tactic, and I would have James Cook available, sadly not a civil action to elect him already. But I have him in hand. There could be one other leader that could be really strong for me, Maria Theresa. The thing is that for wolves, Maria Theresa could also be very, very strong with having that much food saved up. It might definitely be that he will go for Robespierre at the end, but if he goes for Maria, then Robespierre is not that great for me. Shakespeare and Darwin are also both not really that great for me. So now I have a chance to get James Cook for 1 civil action. I thought I should maybe take that opportunity. However, there's also this justice system, and I thought maybe I can also just take the justice system, develop it, and then go for the Suez Canal, but missing out on Rifleman and James Cook for that felt a bit too expensive. And at the end, as you can see, I will actually go for something interesting. I will go for the constitutional monarchy, despite having the normal monarchy already. I have a bunch of science, I have the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I have the Acropolis, and with all of that, the constitutional monarchy only costs 7 science. It will make it that Eepogi has to pay 1 science. If I don't invest any science, then I have that much saved up that maybe there's a chance that Eepogi will cancel the pact. So I thought that investing some science now will maybe lower the chances that Eepogi will cancel the pact. And also, if I don't go for either Conmon or Justice System, I will just be stuck on 5 civil actions, and especially with having some relatively nice production, I thought it could be quite bad and could make it quite difficult for me to do some nice stuff with the many food and resources that I will be having. And with that I came to the conclusion that yes, I do want to go for the constitutional monarchy. It's only 2 science more than the justice system, but it's available for 1 civil action cheaper, and it not only gives me a civil but also a military action. So I developed that, but then I have to make a tough call for my last civil action, because I can either take the Rifleman or James Cook here. Also the journalism could be a fine option, giving me something to invest my resources, but probably the least important thing out of those 3 things. Of course, with having the classic army tactic, it seems quite important to take the Rifleman here, and maybe I can just hope to get Maria Theresa, but I don't know when I will get her, and I don't know if I get her. So it's also quite a risk to not take James Cook here, and at the end I actually went for James Cook. It's of course quite a bit of a risk, but first of all, both Eepogi and wolves have swordsmen already, meaning that I hopefully will have a decent shot at getting the second copy at some point. And if I should not get the Rifleman, at least I have this upgraded medieval army tactic, which is also already quite fine. I can maybe just go for a second tactic and still have a somewhat fine amount of military, and then maybe hope to get modern infantry at some point. So at the end, I actually was willing to skip the Rifleman, but it is quite a bit of a risk. If my opponents wouldn't have had swordsmen already, then I probably would have taken the Rifleman, but with both of them having swordsmen, I was hoping that maybe I still have a shot at getting the Rifleman. I keep my colonization cards, the second colony and the classic army tactic. Eepogi seeds, now the new deposits are revealed, I gain 8 resources out of it. Eepogi gains 7, is now able to finish the ocean liner, uses it to increase its population, goes for an upgrade, builds another printing press, just ups his production as quickly as possible, then takes the cannons and the cavalryman to have all of the military technologies available. Or all military types. Wolves this turn grabs the Conmon. He doesn't have enough science to go into it immediately. He could now, for example, just go into scientific method, finally start the science production, but he again will delay it, goes for Robespierre instead, goes for the Conmon, has now lots of civil and military actions with having the Conmon on top of the Kremlin, and then he will take the breakthrough, the revolutionary idea, increases his population a bunch of times, and then builds a religion. Will of corruption at the end, but has still a decent amount of resource saved up. For this turn, I think I definitely agree with his choice. Maybe he could have waited for Maria, but Robespierre is available now, and with having Eleanor, he definitely wants to make sure that he gets her 3 civil actions back when replacing her. And while he again doesn't up science production, he has now lots of civil and military actions, and an important part of this turn working, I think, is this copy of Revolutionary Idea, which will allow him to go for the scientific method at the next turn. And then he will be able to go for some upgrades. So thanks to this Revolutionary Idea, he can go for those upgrades, which I think is very important for this turn to make sense. But with the revolutionary idea and also the breakthrough, I think the things are now coming together. He delayed his science production, but he still has his government form, he has the architecture, he has the Kremlin, and now at the next turn, he finally might have the chance to get into the scientific methods. Now it's my turn, and as you can see, I will actually declare a war over territory. I could have, of course, pushed, and I almost overlooked this option, but I realized that I can actually go for a relatively decent amount of strength, something that I maybe want to do anyway, and that Eepogi, with maybe having played it a little bit greedy, having gone for the coal upgrade and the printing press, doesn't have the biggest military potential for his next turn. So I go for the war over territory here. I will declare it. I will go for the strategy, which I wanted to go for anyway, with having the scientific operation, with it being available for 1 civil action only. After having gone for the strategy, I can increase my population 2 times, building a knight, building a warrior, going up to 18 strength. And when we take a look at Eepogi's situation, he has cannons and cavalrymen in hand, but he has only 9 resources. New deposits are already out, so he can't profit from that event. Foray is already out as well, and he basically can only build 1 of those units. He might have the defensive army tactic, or actually not. I have knowledge about the defensive army tactic, so he can't have the defensive army tactic. He can maybe go for 1 cavalryman, copy the medieval army tactic, but yeah, there's just not too much danger. Wolves as well could have been a target for a war, but he is guaranteed to get this copy of cavalryman. I can't really deny it, it would be too expensive, and then he would be able to build 2 cavalrymen and go for copying this tactic. And I might still be able to win the war, but against Eepogi, there's a bigger chance that I might even be able to steal 2 yellow tokens. I still had to make a decision though on whether I want to go for the war over territory or the war over technology. And at the end I went for the war over territory because before my next turn there's a good chance that the age might end. And if I then lose the 2 yellow tokens, I have to invest some civil actions, either with going for the organized religion that I will still take this turn, or just increasing my population a bunch of times. I need to invest some civil actions to get out of any uprising issues. And having to use those civil actions could remove the option from myself to just go for a follow-up war, because if I should have a chance to get the rifleman at the next turn, I can actually go for some upgrades, review the classic army tactic, and just follow up with a war over technology immediately, really putting some pressure on maybe especially Eepogi, but hopefully also on wolvs, who has to follow up and has to react to the strength push. So I went for the war over territory, so that with hopefully gaining some yellow tokens, I might have it easier to fix my uprising and maybe have more free civil actions to make sure that I can take and develop the riflemen even when they are available for 3 civil actions. After having built a warrior, as said, I will take the organized religion. I don't have a happy face solution yet, so I really need to take 1, and now I have the chance to take 1 for 1 civil action. And then with the last civil action, I just elected James Cook, getting the additional culture production, and if there is a colony revealed at some point, maybe I also have a higher chance winning it. I have corruption at the end of the turn. Rats are already out. That's some very important knowledge to play this turn like I play it, but those are already out, and yeah, so I was hoping that this war will do some damage to Eepogi and that maybe I have a shot at stealing 2 yellow tokens. I draw the politics of strength and the economic progress. Eepogi seeds, the crusades are revealed. I was happy to see it, another strength event. I'm a little bit behind in culture when we take a look at the overview, but with the crusades, now I'm definitely in reach again. Then Eepogi will use the ocean liner, develops the cavalryman, builds 1, takes the patriotism, the breakthrough, the efficient upgrade, and a copy of reserves, actually not copying the tactic. Maybe he rather wants to draw some cards, maybe still hoping for an H2 tactic to find, like maybe Napoleonic army could be interesting for him. But with that he is only at 11 strength, meaning that I indeed will be able to steal 2 yellow tokens from him. Also, he has taken a lot of cards from the row, with that it's guaranteed that the age will end before my next turn. And not only to Eepogi, but also to wolves. Maybe this war is doing a bit of damage, because now maybe finally could have been the time to go for those scientific methods, but he would be stuck at a low amount of strength, and instead he will go for the cavalryman, build 2 of them, copy the tactic going up to 16 strength, and then he will go for the Harvard College and increases his population again. But thanks to the breakthrough, he has still enough science to go for the scientific method at the next turn. However, he has now taken the Harvard College, which I found a bit of an interesting pick. First, you could think maybe it could be a sign of something like economic progress, but that event I have just drawn, so we will have to see if maybe wolves get some additional resource out of the event. If not, he can't finish it before his next turn, and then it will be a little bit late, especially because he still has those scientific methods around, so it's an interesting pick. Maybe just taking some yellow cards could have been fine as well, maybe together with the opera to be prepared for those culture leaders. But I mean, maybe you can invest into the Harvard College, doesn't need to commit to the scientific method, which maybe could give him the opportunity to go for some H3 text directly, so that could be an idea, but still maybe the Harvard College could be a bit late, but let's see how that will work for him. Also, as you can see, the riflemen are coming down the row, and those weren't taken away by wolves, and with that I indeed, as already said at the turn before, can go for a follow-up war immediately. I will lose 2 yellow tokens to the end of the age, but thanks to the war I will gain 2 yellow tokens again, covering my happy faces again, or my unhappy faces again. And then I will declare the war over technology. I can go for the rifleman, I can go for 2 upgrades, I can reveal the tactic, but not only that, I can even increase my population 2 times, build another rifleman, with that going up to 27 strength, and also making it possible to get out of corruption with just increasing my population again. I have now 2 unhappy workers, but I think I had knowledge about one of the 2 major, or one of the 2 unhappy face related, happy face related events. I'm at the moment not sure if it was immigration or civil unrest, but I had knowledge at least about one of those, and with that it's maybe a somewhat acceptable risk to have those unhappy workers, especially because wolves also has quite a bunch of them, and which could be another sign that I don't have to worry about that too much. And yeah, I'm now at 27 strength. Maybe I have a shot at taking that Code of Laws away from Eepogi, going up to 7 civil actions, or I can just take a bunch of science, maybe the cartography if I expect some more colonies to come. There is still a bit of a price to pay here, because I don't get any draws, and we are now in H3, and H3 draws are quite valuable, but nonetheless I was willing to go for that war, again putting some pressure on my opponents and hopefully doing quite some damage to Eepogi. Now it's Eepogi's turn, and sadly this turn he gets a little bit of help. He has the promise of military protection, and wolves is willing to accept this pact, giving Eepogi 4 additional strength. Eepogi will then play the patriotism, goes for another cavalryman, can copy the tactic, and is now at 23 strength, so at the end I will steal only 4 science, but it's still a nice amount, and it will do some damage to Eepogi. Eepogi will then go for journalism that allows him to get out of corruption. He can develop it relatively cheaply with the scientific corporation, and goes now up to 7 science production, takes then the reserves and the urban growth. Now it's Wolf's turn. He is the weakest again, nonetheless he is willing to cede, and the strategic territory is revealed. Maybe a nice taming for wolves, because there's a war going on, but Eepogi nonetheless is willing to bid quite a lot, maybe even an army potentially, I don't know. I was willing to bid the 1 rifleman that I have, plus the card and the 2 cards from Cook, but it's not nearly enough. At the end Wolves is able to win it, at least he has to send an army, 2 colonization cards, so it's a bit of a price, but getting those H3 draws that early is also extremely valuable. He then this turn will go for the organized religion, so he still isn't going for the scientific method, but with having the Harvard College it I think makes sense to maybe not commit to the scientific method, especially because there's actually a copy of computers available that he can't go for the next turn, but potentially in 2 turns when he finishes the Harvard College at the next turn. He stays at 15 strength, indicating that maybe he has drawn enough defense cards to defend himself. He could have easily built a warrior, but makes the decision to not do it. Now it is my turn. I will first of all just steal 4 science from Eepogi. I could have also stolen the cartography, but I thought I might want to have the science more, especially because there are quite a bunch of interesting texts on the row that I might need a lot of science for. Then I want to push, and the question is, which event do I want to push? One very important thing to note is also that Bill Gates is coming down the row. Eepogi doesn't have any labs left. I have only the alchemies and there's only one copy of computers left. I made a decision especially because there's a lot of other interesting stuff to do for me that I'm not willing to deny Bill Gates, meaning that Bill Gates will be available to wolves and he has the computers in hand. He doesn't have enough science to develop them immediately at the next turn, but he could go for them soon. And with that, I wasn't willing to commit to the economic progress yet, but I was hoping that I might have a shot at remaining the strongest, or at least hopefully not being the weakest, and with that I made a decision to put the politics of strength into the deck. I was happy to see what event is revealed, because the 6 additional signs from the Cold War are definitely quite useful for me. To start my turn, I will definitely go for the civil service for a price of only 8 signs. That is just too big of a boost to get that early in the game, and I will go up to 8 civil actions. Now, before the Cold War was revealed, I had a relatively clear turn planned, because I will now, also with the Cold War being revealed, grab those movies. There's another copy coming down the row. If I don't grab the movies this turn, there's a chance I might miss out on them. And I do think there is quite some potential here with having the movies. There's Fleming and Chaplin in the game, and there's the Hollywood. So if I should get those cards, I have the potential to score quite a lot of culture. I have some decent resource production, so it's definitely possible that I have the potential to go for a big Hollywood here. And before the Cold War was revealed, I made a decision or thought that for my turn I will just develop the movies, build one, get out of corruption, take the reserves, and then be done with my turn. Being a little bit unhappy about skipping the democracy, but without the 6 signs from the Cold War, it felt like I don't have enough science in the near future to develop the democracy anyway, and if I have to decide between democracy and movies, then I thought the movies might be the more important thing here, especially with the Leader and Wonder support. However, with the 6 additional signs of the Cold War, I at the end changed my decision, because now I might have enough science to support both the democracy and the movies. Not this turn immediately, but hopefully relatively soon. I will take the democracy, and with building the religion I get out of corruption. It's a bit annoying or not completely clean, because I might not need the second religion really, but it at least produces me one culture. In case there is actually a happy face related event coming, it makes it a little bit less harsh, and it makes it the democracy is cheaper for now, gets me out of corruption, and maybe if I go for the organized religion, there is a chance that I will go for 2 upgrades at some point. Still, that's a bit awkward, but I was willing to build this. I can then develop the democracy for relatively cheap, and I can still take the reserves, cards that I really wanted to take, just starting to accumulate as many resources as possible to potentially build a very big Hollywood. At the next turn I am at 9 signs, the movies cost 8, however it's not certain that I can develop them, because if Eepogi develops 2 technologies, then I'm missing 1 science. I was however hoping that with the technologies that are coming down the row, that maybe he doesn't necessarily wants to develop 2 technologies yet. I mean, he maybe wants to go for pro sports. I considered even going for a line where I don't build this religion, accept corruption, accept a higher price for the democracy, and then take the professional sports. First of all, I would deny it from Eepogi, who still needs a happy face solution, and second of all, with taking yet another card, Bill Gates would be discarded before Wolf's turn. I think I would consider that more in case wolves would have enough science to immediately get into computers at his next turn. But with him having to finish the Harvard College first and then only in 2 turns being able to even start the computer upgrades, I think Bill Gates is still quite strong for him, but not that strong that I was willing to pay that big of a price, having corruption, not having the cultural production, the religion, democracy costing one more, which makes it quite a bit less likely that I will actually be able to also go for computers already at the next turn. And so I discarded that thought, but it could be an interesting option to actually let Bill Gates be discarded. But there are still leaders like Einstein, Sid Meier, Steve Jobs, so wolves might still get a fine leader for himself, and so I was not willing to pay that price. And yeah, so at the end I went for the democracy. Now I'm actually at 9 civil actions, so that's quite a lot. I'm at 9 culture production. I'm slowly catching up to my opponents, and ideally I was hoping that at the next turn I will be able to develop the movies and start even more culture production. I will draw my first impact, the impact of Harmony, which is actually quite a fine one. I have already a Harmony of 16, and with just building one more urban building, I'm already at 20. Eepogi this turn, after having already gone for journalism, will still now go for the multimedia. With the scientific corporation, it's not that big of a science prize. He can go for some more upgrades, increases production. Then he develops the professional sports, increases his population with the ocean liner service, is able to build one going up to 27 strength. He has some big famine issues, but he can fix those at least for now with playing the reserves for food, and then he can take the revolutionary idea. I think just overall a very clean turn from him. And sadly also a turn where he ends up developing two technologies. Maybe if I would have taken a closer look at this turn, I could have come to the conclusion that it is actually likely that probably will go for two techs, especially because he also might notice that that will prevent me from going for the movies already at the next turn. So yeah, maybe just ignoring democracy and still going just for movies could have been fine. On the other hand, I have now 9 civil actions and I will be able still to go for movies soon. Then Eepogi is also willing to invest 2 draws into military actions to copy the classic army, but that will make him the strongest for now. Wolv's Seeds, the event revealed is the freedom of movement. He will actually use it to put a cavalryman into the organized religion. He will then finish the Harvard College this turn after having played the reserves, I think. Can then take the military build-up and thanks to the Harvard College actually use it immediately for 10 resources and then rebuild the units, one of which he just transferred to the organized religion. So I think a very creative use case out of the freedom of movement and also the Harvard College's ability actually coming in clutch immediately. He then takes Bill Gates in hand, takes an urban growth, and then increases his population, using even more resources of the military build-up to even build another swordsman. He then now could copy the classic army tactic, but decides against it. It's only +2 strength, and the draws are probably quite important to find some good impacts for Bill Gates. The next turn he will be able to go for some very cheap computer upgrades with having all of those yellow cards, and then Bill Gates will still give him quite a lot of value, even though it's not the earliest Bill Gates any longer. Now it is my turn, and there is a card revealed, and that's actually the Hollywood. And I made a decision to take the Hollywood this turn, and that also influenced my decision for my politics phase, because maybe you have noticed it, I actually put the economic progress in the deck. And that is definitely a bit of a risk, because if that is revealed a bit later, until wolvs has already gone for a bunch of computers, it could really generate him quite a bit of value. But I was hoping that with me going for the Hollywood, that every bit of additional resource has the potential to result in quite a lot of additional value, if that means that I am able to build an additional urban building to compare to not having the resource from the economic progress. So even if I maybe at the end gain a little bit less resources than wolves, maybe it could still be more valuable for me if it just makes my Hollywood quite a bit bigger. And also, if it is revealed a bit earlier, it might just work out perfectly for me. I gain the additional resources, I have the nice thing to invest those resources with the Hollywood, and also wolves doesn't get as much. Eepogi has some strong resource production, but he has some big famine issues, and there is a chance that it might actually cost him some culture, the economic progress. And with that, I was hoping that it will be somewhat fine for me. I have also some additional blue tokens from the civil service and the developed territory, so there's a chance that maybe I will get a quite decent amount out of the economic progress. I then opened the refugees. A bit of a surprising event, as for the time being I was for long terms the strongest, but probably seated by Eepogi, who at the last turn was willing to sacrifice his draws in order to get the 2 additional strength from the classic army tactic. But at least I'm not a part of this event, I don't get hit by it. As I said, I go for the Hollywood. If I don't take it, there's a chance that Eepogi could take it with the multimedias and the flaming that is coming down the road. Movies will be discarded, so he won't be able to go for any theaters, but he could still go for a decent Hollywood and make the decision to deny it from me. I have a lot of resource. I think I have the potential to make the Hollywood relatively big, especially now also with the economic progress coming. I also thought about seeding the economic progress and then going for oil, but I just think I don't have the science for it. I need to go into movies soon. And yeah, so I was willing to take the Hollywood now, especially because this turn I can't invest into movies anyways, so I can't use my civil actions there, and just having the civil actions to take this wonder out of the way, and maybe at the next turn being able to focus fully on getting those movies going will maybe be quite strong. After taking the Hollywood, I also wanted to take just as many resources as possible. Definitely the engineering genius, but I also made the decision to take the sufficient upgrade. Also, you might have noticed that with the freedom of movement, I actually put a Rifleman into alchemy, because at the end of my turn, even with not using the freedom of movement, I thought it might be quite nice to build a Rifleman. However, if I then do not use the freedom of movement, building the Rifleman would have meant that I would be at 30 strength instead of only being at 27 now, with having put the Rifleman away, and there is actually the politics of strength coming. But I thought it might be quite strong to get an additional alchemy going, because otherwise investing into movies, maybe still at some point going for air forces, could be a bit tricky. Also going into something like engineering could be potentially quite strong to make those movies cheaper. So I thought a bit of additional science also for impacts maybe later on, like balance. Having the alchemy could be quite nice. And I thought also about putting a religion into an alchemy, but it just was a bit awkward and didn't really work out that nicely. And at the end, I just put a Rifleman into alchemy, and then after having taken all of those cards, I will increase my population 2 times, rebuild the Rifleman, get out of corruption, at least being back at 27 strength, and hopefully at least not getting hit by the politics of strength. At the next turn, I definitely have enough science to go for movies, potentially also for the organized religion if I want to. The efficient upgrade, of course, doesn't help with making the Hollywood big, but I might still need one upgrade to temples at some point, and now I can just do it for free. I have a shot at getting the efficient upgrade now, and it might just give me 4 additional resources for a very cheap price here. Still, it could have been considered to not go for it, because Fleming, there's a chance that he might be taken away by Eepogi. Then I will go for Chaplain likely, and then I have some additional happy faces, and I might not need the organized religion, and then maybe the efficient upgrade won't do that much. So maybe I could have also just increased my population in additional time. With having the additional civil action, I think putting a religion into alchemy could have worked also potentially a bit better. But at the end, I thought it just might be a very cheap way now to get 4 additional resources going, which hopefully will be somewhat useful for me. And if not, then at least I also don't need to do the investment. I get some draw. Sadly, I don't draw another impact, but I have a war in hand in case maybe one of my opponents is not careful at one point. Eepogi will actually cancel the promise of military protection here, which is interesting, but with me having put a Rifleman into the alchemy, it just maybe doesn't look like there are some strength events coming, so my decision to just for the moment not care that much about the politics of strength maybe made it that Eepogi thought that there are probably no big strength events coming, Cold War and refugees are already out, and he just wants to get his culture production back, cancels the pack, goes down to 25 strength. He then will actually go for the communism, a bit costly, but it makes it that he gets finally more military actions and with that also more draws. And then he will actually, after rebuilding a swordsman, I think he put one into the agriculture actually with the freedom of movement. Then he will go for flaming and the efficient upgrade. Nobel prizes are activated, a bit annoying for him having invested now a lot of science into the communism will make it a bit more difficult for him to get some Nobel prizes, but he might still be able to score some at some point, and with flaming also increases his culture production even more. But I was happy to see that he actually drops down in strength, because out of the sudden I have a shot at winning the politics of strength again. Wolves seeds. No politics of strength is revealed yet, but another event that I was very happy to see, that is the economic progress, because that is now indeed revealed before Wolves has the chance to go for Bill Gates. That worked out very nicely for me. I actually gained more resources out of it. I have the Hollywood to invest those resources. Eepogi gains the most resources, but he doesn't gain any food, and he actually loses 4 culture to famine. So that's definitely a bit fortunate for me that this event was now revealed as the first one. Nonetheless, it is also somewhat helpful for Wolves, because only thanks to the additional resource from the economic progress, he is able to not only go for 2 upgrades, but even build an additional computer, so he also used those resources nicely and now gets even more resource production, is now at 15 resources and 18 science production, which is definitely a bit threatening, especially considering because now after getting his production, he will still have the culture lead, he will get a Bill Gates bonus, so I was a bit worried, but at least the fast food chains will be discarded, and yeah, but I mean, both Manhattan Project and United Nations could be quite fine wonders for him. not that much worse than the fast food chains, potentially even better if he has a strong impact to evaluate for the United Nations. And with that many science, of course, he might also be able to go for some bunch of Nobel Prizes. So the additional computer with the economic progress, definitely, despite missing out maybe on some resources, he still got maybe more than the pure resources show out of the economic progress. Now it is my turn. I definitely want to push. I'm the strongest. The politics of strength is in the deck, and I have one impact that should at least be a decent neutral one with the chance of being a nice one, the impact of harmony. I seed it into the deck. Sadly, there's no politics of strength revealed, but instead an independence declaration, which will be a bit painful for wolves because he will actually lose the strategic territory. I, this turn, will go for Chaplin. He is the last leader left that synergizes with the Hollywood, so I will definitely go for him. Also, I will start going for movies this turn, so I'm electing him immediately. I build one movie, I build two movies, getting out of corruption. I take the revolutionary idea, I take the patriotism, just in case one of my opponents will try to do something with the military, maybe trying to disrupt me from building the Hollywood. I wanted to have those additional resources for the military available so that I can maybe be also a bit more greedy at my next turn with having more resources as a backup for my military. And then with the last civil action, I actually made a decision to develop the organized religion here. With the revolutionary idea, I can still go for threaten to go for something like air forces at the next turn, and it just costs me 2 science. It will cost Eepogi a science, and I score now a Nobel Prize, and who knows if I get another chance to score a Nobel Prize that easily. So I could have maybe also taken a cheap tech from here and go for Nobel Prize later on, but maybe I still have a shot at actually going for Nobel Prize if I just gain 2 more technologies, and with the revolutionary idea, maybe I have a shot at in 2 turns, which will be very likely my last one. There's even a chance that maybe already the next turn could be my last one, but not that big of a chance. But yeah, then I might still be able to go for a second Nobel Prize. I was hoping for some interesting impacts here and was a bit disappointed, but at least I still have the international agreement in hand, which at least allows me to push if I want to. Eepogi again goes for cancelling a pact that the turn before cancelled the promise of military protection. Now he cancels the scientific method. Definitely something rare to see. 2 politics phases in a row, a pact being cancelled. Eepogi used Flaming to take a look at Wolf's hand, meaning at his next turn he will then take a look at my hand. He will go for even more production. Having gone for the communism not only gave him his military actions, but also makes it possible for him to actually go for 4 libraries now. He will go for an additional professional sports, again place the reserves for food to not have any famine, and then it takes a military tax. Now it's Wolf's turn. He doesn't see it, so sadly the politics of strength still remains in the deck, and Wolves now has a shot of getting stronger. He offers the international tourism, of course not a great pact to see accepted between your opponents. At least it's now relatively late in the game, so hopefully it won't have the biggest impact, but still some additional culture will be scored for both of my opponents. Wolves takes the United Nations, is missing 1 resource to potentially finish it immediately, takes the democracy, increases his population, builds the cavalryman. After having used this 1 military action, he will develop the democracy and then go for the rockets. Also, he reveals the shock troops tactic, which actually lets him drop down in strength, but maybe he wanted to keep a bunch of other cards in his hand. And still wanted to keep the tactic available. Then it is my turn again. I'm still the strongest. The politics of strength is one of those 2 events, so I definitely want to push here, and the only option to push is the international agreement. And I was happy to see that finally the politics of strength is revealed, and also I do actually get quite a decent impact out of it. Impact of population has the potential to be relatively big against Eepogi, but especially big against wolves, potentially even giving me plus 10 or something like that against him. So I was quite happy to see this impact, and at the next turn I will have a good impact to see it. Now at my turn I will increase my population. I will again build another movie, just maximizing my culture production, and then I do some things here. First of all, to give me a chance for bigger Hollywood, that is grabbing the reserves, but also to make myself as safe as possible, that is grabbing the air forces. I thought about if maybe it's not necessary to grab the air forces, but the problem is Eepogi, for example, that his next turn could just take and finish the Manhattan Project, go for up to 40 strength and declare war against me, and even if I could maybe win it slightly without the air forces, it would prevent me from finishing the Hollywood, and with the air forces my strength potential is just so big that hopefully such a distraction war is not really an option any longer. And now, sadly, even with the reserves, I don't have enough resources to build another movie even at the next turn and finish the Hollywood, so my Hollywood might stay with those 3 movies, but together with Chaplin it will actually score me 32 cultures, so still a very nice Hollywood. But there are some chances how maybe I could still make the Hollywood even bigger. One of them being that one of the remaining technologies is the engineering. If I get the engineering, I actually have just enough resources to build another movie and finish the Hollywood. And also, I've seeded the international agreement. If both of my opponents are willing to push, then if I push at my turn as well, and if I'm still the strongest, a lot of ifs, but it's just a possibility, then I could have a chance at maybe taking the last copy of reserves, and again, maybe allowing myself then to go for a 4th movie. With the remaining 2 civil actions, I could potentially just do some civil actions that I need to do anyway, because I might be a bit tight on civil actions for my next turn. But at the end I made the decision to take this copy of multimedia. It has some use cases for myself, and also it's a denial for both of my opponents. Or not a denial, but it does some damage potentially to both of my opponents. It's a denial from wolvs, because Eepogi can't take this multimedia away, and wolvs has a lot of resources with Bill Gates, and now both copies of multimedia and movies are gone, meaning he can't invest into any of those. He can build another computer, but can't really increase his culture production by a lot. And with taking the multimedia, the age will actually end, meaning Eepogi will immediately lose the 2 yellow tokens, and also loses the cannon, maybe a cheap tech to allow him to go for 2 more Nobel Prizes, and maybe also most important, he will not get another draw step, not giving him another chance to draw any impact. But, and the use cases for myself are that I have this Rev idea in hand, I have the Air Forces in hand. With the Revolutionary idea at the next turn I have 20 science, meaning that if I don't have the multimedia in hand, then only if I get a copy of Mechanized Agriculture, and of those at least there are 2 left, would allow myself to go for a Nobel Prize. But now with the multimedia I could go for a Nobel Prize also with this copy of Engineering or with this last copy of Military Theory, so I just increase my chances, if I have the 3 civil actions, to go for another Nobel Prize, and with that it has also some use case for myself, but it could also make it a bit tight for me with the amount of civil actions that I have for the next turn, because I still need to finish the Hollywood. I want to increase my population 2 times for the impact of population, and also to do something with that population potentially. I have to play some reserves, so it could also turn out that using the civil action is a bit costly for me at the end. I will then use the Engineering Genius that I will do at my next turn anyway, so I will do it this turn already. I discarded the 2 other impacts because Eepogi will now take a look at my hand with Flaming, and I want to give him as less information about impacts as possible. I will draw 1 new one, the impact of industry, but that one is definitely not better than the impact of population. Now Age 4 starts. Eepogi seeds, and there's quite an influential event revealed, the Iconoclasm. I just before this video published a video where I talked about the H2 events, and I at some point in that video mentioned that the Iconoclasm can be quite impactful when it is revealed in H4, and here I definitely was not happy to see it. The good news for me is of course that I will only lose 1 production of my leader, while for example Eepogi will now lose this production and the next production, so Eepogi will lose 6 culture and the ability to take 1 more look at Wolf's hand. But I will lose 4 culture production and 8 for the Hollywood, so a total of 12 culture lost. Wolves will lose 9 resource production, potentially 12 if his plan would have been to build another computer at his turn. So that's also painful, but probably the 9 resource will not translate into... I mean, it depends on what he maybe can do, so it could potentially be costly, but the Bill Gates bonus he actually scores now when Bill Gates is removed with the Iconoclasm, so that's important to know. He did get the culture bonus from Bill Gates, that one is not lost. So I was not too happy about seeing this event, because now my Hollywood will likely only be a 24 culture instead of 32, unless I manage to build another movie. Eepogi, interestingly, goes for 2 food upgrades, finally allowing him to get some more population. Interesting that he is willing to do this investment, but maybe he just can't invest into too many other things, and it will prepare him nicely for things like impact of agriculture and balance, and could be an indicator that one of those impacts is coming. Sadly, it takes a lot of technologies, and with that makes it relatively easily possible for wolves to just take all of the technologies away from me, making it that I can't go for any Nobel Prizes in my turn. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will see it and opens the impact of science, another impact that I was not happy to see. It gives Wolves, who I thought at this point is maybe my main contender for the first place, plus 14 against me, so a very strong impact. Of course, with Wolves having built all of those computers, there are just some strong impacts, but that's maybe an especially strong one, so I was not happy to see it. Wolves will then go for the modern infantry, for the satellites, scores Nobel Prize, finishes the United Nations, and he has another impact to evaluate the impact of strength, which gives him another +7 against me. So I was not happy about all of those developments with now those impacts being revealed. Eepogi afterwards said that he was a bit unhappy that he forgot about maybe this possibility of this impact being evaluated immediately, and that he maybe should have just built a warrior at his last turn. Then evaluating the impact of strength would have been even worse for me. Now at least Wolves only gained +7 against me with evaluating this impact. And Wolves will then just take all of the technologies cards, can at the next turn go for another Nobel Prize. Has finished this wonder already. I will now finish my wonder, but he has now quite a bit of a culture lead, also with the Bill Gates bonus already. So after my last turn, I thought I have maybe a somewhat decent shot at winning the game, because I will get a big Hollywood, one last very strong production. I have drawn the impact of population, which is one of the strong impacts for me. But now, with those developments, I was a bit more skeptical that at the end it will be enough to finish before Wolves, but there's definitely still a shot. At my turn, I will definitely see the impact of population. And what I saw, again, I was not too happy about. The popularization of science is revealed. Wolves really capitalizes on his extremely big science production, gets 12 culture against me. In my last video where I talked about the H2 events, I said that this is basically like impact just from H2, and here we can see it. There's quite some culture differences with both of my opponents having a much bigger science production going. This turn I will definitely finish the Hollywood. I don't get the engineering, I can't take the reserves with the international agreement, but I wouldn't have been the strongest anyway, so I can just finish that for 24 culture. And now, having spent this one civil action to take the multimedia will actually bite me a little bit, because it will remove one option from me. After finishing the Hollywood, I will increase my population 2 times. And not only the culture that I lose from Chaplin is relevant, but also the happy faces, because now I have to use one civil action to use the sufficient upgrade, which at least comes in handy now, to go for this upgrade, getting more happy faces, also for potential impact of happiness, for the impact of population. I just have to do it, I have to free up those workers. But this one civil action that I have to spend now, instead of just having the happy faces from Chaplin, and also the civil action that I spent on taking the multimedia, will now make it that I just miss one civil action to play the turn how I would like to play it. Because one impact that I have seeded is the impact of harmony. Now I would now have the opportunity to build another military unit and another farm or mine, making it that I have a 24 harmony. The problem being that I know that Wolves has this impact of strength in hand, and if I don't get stronger and make sure that I'm stronger than Wolves doesn't have that many resources left, he has the military theory, but I have the ability with building an air force to make sure that I'm stronger than him. And if I don't do it, he might just see that even when Eepogi, who can get even stronger than I can do, even if he gets stronger and Wolves is only the second strongest, Wolves might see me as the bigger contender, with me being closer in culture, and with that he might still see the impact of strength as a +7. And so I then came to the conclusion I need to build an air force. But sadly, if I go for this air force, I need to play 2 yellow cards to build one, and now I'm missing one resource or one civil action to play those reserves to maybe build a farm or mine to also increase my harmony by +4. Instead I can only play the reserves for resources, build another rifleman, at least making myself a bit stronger, scoring +2 for a potential impact of competition, but sadly not being able to increase the impact of harmony. At least maybe I don't give any hint away that the impact of harmony is in the deck. With building a farm or mine, I think that would have been a bit of a sign for my opponents that the impact of harmony is coming, and both of them have some abilities to maybe prepare for it, or maybe wolves could potentially destroy his harmony a little bit if he is willing to build some new buildings. And yeah, so with that, I sadly losing Chaplain or maybe picking this multimedia, which then would have resulted in the age not ending and maybe the iconoclasm not removing any leader, resulted in me not being able to play this turn optimally. Then it's Eepogi's turn. He will play the patriotism, develops the military theory, and he can increase his strength quite nicely and also increase his culture production, which made me hope that maybe the impact of culture is in there, Eepogi making sure to build those religions. Maybe out of hope that I have seeded this, but also definitely maybe has seeded it himself. He didn't seed this turn though, so he would have needed to commit to it already earlier, making it maybe a bit more less likely because I still had Chaplain at this point and potential to maybe build even more movies. But still, that is definitely hope for me because impact of culture would give me +7 against wolves. Wolf seeds and opens the international agreement, which won't do anything. He can develop 3 technologies this turn, scoring another Nobel Prize, going for an upgrade, going for some upgrades to his farms, and then just ends his turn. Sadly, he doesn't destroy his harmony, which probably makes sense, as he couldn't build the greatest things anyway, of course depending on what impact knowledge he has. And then after his production he is at 184 culture, and as you can see there is definitely quite a bit of a gap. I'm 18 culture behind. Impact of population will let me catch up 10 culture to him. Impact of harmony will be a neutral one. If there is indeed the impact of culture, then I'm only slightly behind him, but even then I need even more positive impacts, so not the greatest chances for me, but it's definitely not impossible. But also I have to be a bit careful about Eepogi, who is 17 culture behind me, so the gap between us is even a little bit less than the gap between me and wolves. So let's see what the final impacts have to say. The first impact being the impact of government, which is a relatively neutral impact, but gives me a bit less culture than my opponents. Then sadly there's a bad impact for me. The impact of technology gives wolves +28, I gain +16 and Eepogi +24. Eepogi actually only being 8 culture behind me now. Then there's my impact of harmony, which gives every player +20, so that changes nothing. And then we have the impact of population, only +10 for wolves, +20 for me. I gain a bit closer to wolves, but there's not really any impact who can overcome that gap. Eepogi is now 12 culture behind me. There's one final impact that I don't have knowledge about, and it's the impact of colonies. Surprisingly, actually a nice one for me. So if that one and the impact of culture, no impact of tech would have been in the deck, maybe there could have been something possible, but then I also would have been very lucky on those how those final impacts would have been put together. So with this last impact, I finish at the 2nd position, wolves finishes at the 1st position, and Eepogi at the 3rd. Definitely quite an interesting, exciting game. I think things went quite nicely for me. I was able to build a relatively nice economy with alchemy and iron early on. Went for the gamble with the sewer scanner, which was maybe not the right decision, but it worked out. I had a strong wonder. I had then in H3, I had this early classic army tactic draw. I had those wars available at the right time to really damage Eepogi. So I think those things definitely went quite nicely for me. Then I got the Hollywood and Chaplain in H3. And I was hoping that maybe I had a good shot at winning, but then there were a series of not so great events for me at the end of the game, with iconoclasm, popularization of science, impact of strength being revealed at a very shortly after each other, crushing my hopes a little bit. But already before I knew, of course, that wolves has some strong impacts potentially, and that he definitely has, even if I get into the final impacts with the lead, when I finish maybe with a bigger Hollywood and without having knowledge about this iconoclasm and popularization of science. And then even if I go into the final impacts with the lead, it might not be enough, but especially after drawing the impact of population, I thought, oh, maybe this will be enough with that big Hollywood to win the game. But at the end, wolvs just managed to capitalize on his strong science production with the popularization of science, impact of science, and impact of tech, and with that, at the end, managed to win the game. Also, wolvs during the course of the game did some decisions that maybe I would have done differently at the early game, electing Eleanor very early and then also delaying the scientific methods at the end, even not going for them at all. But at the end it came together for him. Maybe he knew that Robespierre was coming and that maybe delaying the science production is fine. Maybe he wanted to get the full value out of the architecture, which he at the end did, finished some wonders with the Harvard College, which was relatively late. But maybe he could allow himself to delay the scientific methods even more, then allowing him to go for computers directly. So, yeah, wolvs definitely a player with a lot of success recently, and my form declines a little bit. So maybe I have to, just take a bit of a closer look at some of the moves that my opponents do and see if I can maybe learn something from it. And also for Eepogi, definitely he has lost at the end, but I still think it was quite a nice comeback for him, because there were two phases during the game where he got hit quite heavily by some bad stuff in H1 with all of those population losses from the events. He had very few population left. Then he recovered quite nicely with the Republic, early coal and ocean liner, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my, he has quite a fine position again. Then I luckily had both of those wars available, which crushed him again quite heavily, losing 2 yellow tokens, 4 science to those wars, having to invest basically all of his military actions almost to defend those wars. But nonetheless, it was relatively close at the end. Only 15 culture was missing for him to tie with me. If maybe he would have built this warrior, then it would have been extremely close between us if the impact of strength would have given him 7 instead of me. So very nice showcase from him that even with some bad developments during the game, you can always still hope for a comeback. Alright, and with that we have finished taking a look at the first game. I hope it was an interesting one for you, but before we finish this video we will also take a short look at the standings, because 2 other games where I was not involved have already finished. And as you can see, while Eepogi has lost a game that we just took a look at, the other games went quite well for him. He managed to win 2-3 of the other games, one against wolvs in Gandin, the other against Todd Silence in Gandin, and with that the standings look as follows. Eepogi had quite a strong start. His games actually from the first batch of games are already finished. He is at 10 points, definitely in a very solid position. Also wolvs is in a solid position, having 3 points less, but also only 2 games finished, is at 7 points for both Todd Silence and me. Everything is completely open still, because we have 1 game finished, we scored 2 points, we can still win the league, we can still get relegated, everything is possible, and no clear direction yet to be noticed. And then Gandin didn't have the greatest start, lost the first 2 games, is at 0 points, so not the greatest start, and with that he probably has to start focusing purely on not getting relegated from now on. Even though theoretically it's of course still possible also for him to win the league. Alright, with that we are at the end of the video. I hope you're excited to see more games from the Intermezzo Championship, and yeah, with that I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.